Answer to Ursaluna on the other side is going to be able to resist both of those moves. It fights pretty well against both the Porygon and the Ursaluna, but it has that huge problem for it in the Archelodon on the other side. So a big thing I'm going to be watching in this match is how does the Corviknight fare, but not on the field yet.
All right, game one of our top 16 here at the Louisville Regional Championships, and what a set we have upon us. Wolfe, Glick, Alberto, Lara. Alberto leading Volcarona, Alolan Ninetales, and Sneasler, Yanmega for Wolfe.
Yeah, so the Yanmega immediately on the field. Lots of fast Pokemon out here for the moment. Looks like a Quiver Dance angle from Alberto, right? Has the Aurora Veil available and the Volcarona ready to set up against two Pokemon that are somewhat of a threat, but if you can start getting a Quiver Dance along with this Aurora Veil, those special attacker Yanmega is going to be doing less damage.
Thanks to the Light Clay held item on the Alolan Ninetales, these screens from Aurora Veil are going to be set for the next 8 turns, helping his team take less damage. Dire Claw does activate a poison into the Ninetales, so it is on a timer. Eventually will knock itself out from the poison, but Flamethrower into Yanmega's Focus Sash, bringing it down to 1 HP. This Air Slash in response is super effective, but thanks to the Aurora Veil, doesn't even do half of Volcarona's HP.
You can see how much bulkier this Ninetales is than some of the other ones we've seen. Definitely an emphasis on being a supportive Pokemon. Gets the Aurora Veil up to help quite a bit here. Yanmega has a Focus Sash, not Sneasler, and so hangs on through that Flamethrower. And so no boosts actually come up. And so Wolfe gets a lot of pretty valuable damage. Just damage going both ways. But the poison onto Ninetales means it's vulnerable to a Dire Claw now, when otherwise it looked like it would have just barely dodged a 2-hit KO, and so it does switch out and we see the Corviknight hit the field.
One way to not take Dire Claw damage is to be a Steel type, just like this Corviknight is. Air Slash into the Volcarona, and it looks like Volcarona was still low enough, even with the Aurora Veil being on the field here, to be a 2-hit KO. So Yanmega doing its job, getting a KO onto that Volcarona, which was a crucial Pokemon on Alberto's end here.
A little bit of damage rolls there, did just under 50% of the Volcarona on the first turn. I guess does a little bit over 50% the second time and gets the KO onto Volcarona. But now Garchomp hits the field. It'll have the speed advantage against the Sneasler because of his Choice Scarf, but now faster than the Yanmega, who's had a chance to get 2 speed boosts. Both of them are required to get over the Garchomp. Meanwhile, Corviknight's in a position where it likes to be able to set up. The Sneasler's not going to be threatening too much damage, especially with Aurora Veil. And then the Yanmega, both of its same type of attack boosted moves are resisted by Corviknight. So this is its chance to set up. Though of course there's probably something lurking in the back that'll be a problem for Corviknight eventually.
Yeah, Yanmega does have a Tailwind here, and it's such a fast Pokemon because of the speed boost in the last 2 turns that it will activate that Tailwind first. Sneasler attacking into the Garchomp, bringing it to just above 50% of its HP remaining. The Rough Skin will do a little bit there to Sneasler, but because of the White Herb held item, it's going to negate those defense drops from Sneasler's close combat. Here is the Earthquake, though. It's only going to be able to hit the Sneasler. There was no Focus Sash. It would have been broken anyway because of the Rough Skin contact, and Sneasler is down. Freebird, though, into the Yanmega. Wolfe understanding Yanmega was not long for the rest of this match, so just click the Tailwind, get that knockout, and now Wolfe has 3 Tailwind turns with 2 Pokemon in the back.
Yeah, Alberto has the Pokemon advantage 3-2, but maybe looks a little bit vulnerable here. The Tailwind's going to be pretty important. If it is Archelodon in the back, it means Archelodon will be faster than the Garchomp and the Ninetales that are in the back, and which frees up a chance to get those Electro Shots off, and there are vulnerable targets because Corviknight cannot protect itself.
Incineroar is going to be one of Wolfe's final 2 Pokemon. His trusty Incineroar, as he doesn't like to admit, but of course has had much success in his VGC career with this first partner Pokemon from the Alola region. Archelodon is the last Pokemon. Neither of these 2 trainers have terastallized yet, so that's obviously an important dynamic in this game 1.
Yeah, Terastallization still available for both players, but right now it is Wolfe out on the offense. Archelodon is going to have its pick of targets. Neither Pokemon can protect itself. This is a really important decision. Alberto is taking the risk that it's going to be a Dragon move coming out from Archelodon into Garchomp, and so it's bringing in the Fairy type to take that move. If instead it's an Electric attack into Corviknight, it'll be a decisive move.
both of Wolf's Pokemon, in the moment, were weak to ground, and even our Jowdon terrestrializing into an electric type means it's still weak to the Choice Scarf Earthquake, but Tailwind is set up on Wolf's side, so Alberto has to find a way to make it through these Tailwind turns. Electro Shot is clicked instead of the Dragon Pulse, so Electro Shot, thanks to the Power Herb held item, is usually a 2-turn attack, but it will be able to activate in 1 turn, boosting our Jowdon's special attack by 1 stage. This is Terra Electric Electro Shot into a Corviknight who's weak to it and has a low special defense stat to begin with. That is a 1-hit KO. Huge for Wolf to get rid of the Corviknight, so it cannot set up or sweep through this game. Incineroar will knock off onto the low Ninetales, but it is resisted, so it does not do much damage.
This feels like really the decisive moment. The Corviknight never took the chance to boost, knowing that it was probably going to have to fight this Archaludon eventually and just needed to get damage in the short term, but then goes down, leaving Alberto down to his last 2 Pokemon with 2 turns of Tailwind left. Wolf also doesn't use a fake out on the previous turn, goes ahead and get a knockoff. Ends up just being a little bit of chip damage into Ninetales, but now a pretty decisive speed moment. There's some chance that Garchomp is faster than Archaludon because of its Choice Scarf versus the Tailwind on the other side, but if it's not, this is a pretty simple end game for Wolf. The Archaludon can just Dragon Pulse into the Garchomp, and Ninetales poisoned and at 31 health is not going to be able to clear this field.
And it's such a difficult decision every turn when you're seeing these 2, top trainers, because Garchomp was intimidated by the Incineroar. You kind of have to weigh the pros and cons. Is it better to click 2 intimidated Earthquakes onto the field while I had Corviknight next to it, compared to swapping out, getting that attack stat back to normal, and now terrestrializing into the pure ground typing, no longer weak to Dragon. However, our Archaludon has already activated that special attack boost thanks to the Electro Shot the last turn. Here is the Dragon Pulse into Garchomp. It's not enough for the KO. Now Choice Scarf, Garchomp with the Terra Ground boost. It's going to be doing super effective damage into both the Wolf Pokemon, but not enough for the Archaludon. It's a 1-hit KO onto Incineroar. The Ninetales is knocked out as well, but there's 1 turn left of Tailwind next turn, and a Scarf Chomp cannot protect.
Wow, I'm really surprised by the bulkiness of the Garchomp there to be able to take a neutral +1 Dragon Pulse, but the problem was taking 1 wasn't enough. Just didn't have the damage to go along with it to finish off this Archaludon, and now Archaludon moves, KOs Garchomp, and gives Wolf game 1 of this match.
What a big victory for Wolfe and his Archaludon. It's a matchup, we said, even with the terrestrialization, usually Archaludons will go grass or fairy or something else to get out of that ground weakness, as it's one of its only 2 natural weaknesses as it has from its typing. But when you're Terra Electric, you're trading that defensive utility for more offensive capability, and it did work out because of that Electro Shot into Corviknight.
Right, it was very important for the Archaludon to get these big attacks off, be able to get the Electro Shot, one-shot the Corviknight, something that very few Pokemon can do, and then finish off this Garchomp. I think the story of that game, we set up before the match that it was important, the matchup between this Corviknight and the Archaludon. Both players opted to leave those Pokemon in the back to start with, and by the time they hit the field, Wolf was already at an advantage. Had the Yanmega with the speed boost able to get the Tailwind up, that meant Archaludon was moving first and really kept Alberto on the back foot. I think Alberto's probably going to need to press the attack a little bit more in the early game and see if he can deny the Tailwind, because it looks like if that offense is set up for Wolf, and the game can just end so quickly that Alberto never really has a chance to set up and follow through in his normal game plan.
And one of the things that's so crucial for this Yanmega, or one of the reasons it's so difficult to deal with because of the speed boost, but because of that focus sash, would mean that Alberto would have to essentially dedicate 2 attacks into the Yanmega slot, which is not one of the important, Pokemon on Wolf's side, which would allow the teammate next to Yanmega, let's say Sneasler or Archaludon or whoever, to kind of get off scot-free without having any attacks. If you try to focus Yanmega, you're leaving another threat very open for, punishing you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are other ways to try to deal with the Yanmega as well. You can get it down to a Focus Sash in turn 1. There are still several things that Alberto has that would move before a +1 speed boosted Yanmega. So for instance, Extreme Speed could try to finish off that Focus Sash. Garchomp should still be faster than the +1 Yanmega. And so even if you have to deal with it on the second turn and not the first, if you can deal with the Tailwind, it could change the dynamic from game 1. Of course, you have to watch out for just completely different game plans from Wolf. Wolf could just totally pivot this from a Tailwind angle to a Trick Room angle, and we could see Ursaluna and Porygon in the next game. So you have to be cautious in Team Preview to not over-adjust to what you just saw.
And remember, because of the damage rolls into the Volcarona, Alberto Alberto might have thought his Volcarona was safe from the air slash because Aurora Veil was set up. Remember, the other reason Garchomp was able to endure that +1 the attack because Aurora Veil was still set up for 8 turns thanks to the light clay. So Alberto knows if Electroshock gives Archaludon the boost, you better have Ninetales set up Aurora Veil to help keep your Garchomp on the field. But it will be a 1 with Ninetales and Volcarona yet again for Alberto, but this time around for Wolfe, switching it up with Incineroar and Porygon 2.
Yep, we see the adjustment immediately from Wolfe. Alberto sticks to the same game plan. But within those leads, there were a lot of different ways this could play. The game 1, Volcarona just went out on the offense because it had vulnerable targets to that offense. Could just flamethrower into Genmega. Would be surprised to see the same thing here. These two aren't vulnerable to Volcarona offense. Maybe means there's more emphasis on instead setting up Volcarona. But if you're trying to set up Quiver Dances, you don't want to be doing that against a Trick Room on the other side, which it seems like is the adjustment for Wolfe in this game. So I think this is a pretty tricky spot for Alberto. No obvious places to go from here.
Aurora Veil from this Alolan Ninetales, no fake out, clicked by Wolfe because it would have had the priority to stop an attack here. The Flamethrower into Porygon 2 does not do too much damage at all, and the Parting Shot preemptively, essentially calling a potential Quiver Dance or something, the Parting Shot will lower that special attack back down. Because he didn't click Quiver Dance, that means it's now -1. Flamethrower is going to do even less to Porygon the next turn.
And this is the classic play of the Porygon and Incineroar, right? You get the Parting Shot to bring Ursaluna on the field and get burnt, and Porygon sets up the Trick Room. The Aurora Veil goes up, it's going to mitigate some of the incoming damage, but that Ursaluna will still hit so hard. The Ninetales, though, has both the Aurora Veil and a defense boost from the snow, might be able to take a Facade, and if it could, then it's threatening damage back to the Ursaluna, but for now, Porygon 2 leaving the field in favor of Incineroar.
Right, as of now, Ursaluna, as a ground type, is very much threatened by a potential Blizzard on the other end from Alolan Ninetales, but the question is, will Ninetales be able to stick around through how much damage Flame Orb Guts boosted Facade can do to it from the Ursaluna on Wolfe's? And Corviknight will swap into that Volcarona slot, wanting to get rid of the special attack drop that Incineroar put onto it the prior turn. Ninetales will protect, trying to hope Ursaluna's attack goes into that position. Facade does go towards the Ninetales, so Ninetales didn't take any damage. Alberto coming out on top, getting his Corviknight onto the field without taking any damage as well.
Gets Corviknight on the field without taking damage, but if Ninetales could take a Facade, that might have been the chance to get a big attack into Ursaluna. Of course, this is a more defensive Ninetales, might have not been a really threatening attack. In the meantime, Corviknight is pretty safe here. The Incineroar can Flare Blitz and wasn't intimidated because this Porygon 2 switch happened before the Volcarona switch, and so no Mirror Armor effect occurred, but still, Corviknight's such a bulky Pokemon.
There's a Facade, double damage because it is burned and has the Guts ability on Ursaluna. Corviknight will move next, boosting its attack and defense from clicking the bulk up. But here is the Flare Blitz from Incineroar into the Ninetales. Even with the Aurora Veil and a defense boost from the snow, it's still super effective. Ninetales goes down. Alberto does get 1 boost to his attack and defense, and in theory, the one Pokemon that can handle the Ursaluna is Corviknight, as it's both immune to the ground attacks and resist Facade.
The problem with this is that there's still one unrevealed Pokemon from Wolfe. Could be the trump card of the Archaludon. You know, if you get the Corviknight really well set up, like it's starting to be here, where it's going to be able to fight Incineroar and Ursaluna very well, but you lose all of your other Pokemon in the meantime, then eventually you're just going to lose to Archaludon. And so Alberto's going to need to be able to preserve those Pokemon next to Corviknight to be able to fight that in the in-game if that is the final threat.
Porygon 2 swaps on to the Incineroar position here. Gets a special attack boost as well thanks to his download ability. Volcarona will protect, trying to bait an attack from the Ursaluna into that slot. And the Facade goes exactly into the protect again. So Alberto has been able to stave off a lot of potential damage under these Trick Room turns just by protecting away from Ursaluna's Facades. That Brave Bird does some solid damage into the Ursaluna, and after the Flame War boost, will bring it down to under half HP.
Problem is that you can only protect safely for 1 turn. Right now, that Volcarona slot is looking pretty vulnerable. Corviknight gets pretty good damage into Ursaluna, but definitely not damage that's going to stop another Facade coming out. Meanwhile, Porygon 2 back on the field with the special attack boost can add in some damage. Maybe help finish off the Volcarona if you're worried Aurora Veil is enough to take this Facade. Let's find out.
And the Facade Volcarona hangs on at 8 HP. Terrablast has to follow up into that slot to make sure Alberto does not get any more damage from his Volcarona here in game 2. So Alberto down to his last 2 Pokemon. 2 normal types on the field means that Body Press is free into those slots. Snow stops. Ursaluna takes a little more recoil from the burn, and the Twisted Dimensions return to normal as Garchomp has the Choice Scarf on the field.
So this is Alberto's moment. This is what he set up and bided time for. Garchomp is ready to threaten Terra Ground, Earthquake. Porygon 2 is weakened. Ursaluna is weakened. The KOs are there. The Incineroar can't switch in very well to this. Will take massive damage from an Earthquake and can't intimidate the Corviknight on the other side. Charcharodon, from what we saw in the last game, needs a couple of attacks to deal with the Garchomp. It's not going to have time for those couple of attacks. This might have been just the setup, just the last 2 Pokemon that Alberto needed to be able to sweep through this game.
That's right. If we know the Incineroar is there, that doesn't want to take a Terra Ground Earthquake from the Garchomp, and presumably if Archaludon is in the back for Wolfe, it's also weak to that ground there. So we are going to have this Terastallization in game 2, just like we saw for game 1. Terra Ground Garchomp, because he's already a ground type, you essentially get that additional same type attack bonus from this Terra Ground here, making this Earthquake even stronger, even though the Intimidate happened from Incineroar. So it's a spread attack. Ursaluna down under half HP. Will be enough for the knockout there. No, it is not, and thanks to the Intimidate, Incineroar hangs on in the red as well. Brave Bird has to pick up the KO.
So Corviknight's able to finish the KO onto Incineroar. Important to not be vulnerable to fake out on the next turn, but now Ursaluna left to attack, left to Facade this Garchomp.
Facade with the Aurora Veil is not enough to KO the Garchomp. Rough Skin is also going to punish. The combination of Rough Skin and Flame Orb takes out the Ursaluna.
Okay, so now we're down to 2 each. Alberto has the Garchomp and the Corviknight. Garchomp now low enough that a Dragon Pulse from Archaludon should be able to finish it, but will it have time? Porygon 2 very low as well. Another important calculation is going to be whether an Earthquake can try to finish off Porygon 2. Only a couple of attacks left for each player.
One of the things that, I'm seeing here on Wolfe's end is that he did not Terastallize that Ursaluna earlier, because, you have access to Terra Ghost, but you want to maybe save that for Porygon or save that for Archaludon in the back. But if you were a Ghost type, you couldn't have taken any of that body press damage. And now, at this point, with only Porygon 2 and Archaludon remaining, even if you Terastallize the Archaludon, you're still weak to it. The Porygon at such low HP had Terra Flying would have been a way to get around the Earthquake as well, which Garchomp is stuck choice locked into for the rest of the game.
All right, these are going to be important damage calcs. The way this is probably going to go is that an Earthquake goes into Archaludon is not going to be enough to KO it. That means Archaludon gets 1 attack to go after one of these, and then Porygon will either be left there at the end or not.
And there is the Terra Flying for Porygon 2 on Wolfe's end. Now it is immune to the Earthquake. You know for certain you're not going to take any damage from this Choice Scarf Earthquake on your Porygon 2. Super effective into the Archaludon though, so that's the big threat for Wolfe right now. Will this Earthquake be enough to take it out? No, it actually only does 50%. It was intimidated before, and now the Electro Shot, that's going to be the Corviknight.
Yeah, Electro Shot into Corviknight. This is such a safe way to end the game for Wolfe. There's no way to stop this Electro Shot. We saw the Earthquake damage in Archaludon in the previous game. That was never going to be a KO. That means Archaludon gets to use this Electro Shot, KO Corviknight. If you know, it's not
it hangs on! Aurora Veil!
And with the
those 8 turns are so crucial compared to the regular 5 turns without Light Clay.
Porygon 2 hangs on through the body press, but the Ice Beam comes out and KOs Garchomp.
Wow, look at the grin on Wolfe's face here, seeing that knockout onto the Garchomp, seeing the Corviknight hang on at 8 HP, but you know it's slower than Archaludon there, so Alberto is just going to lock in the forfeit. Really fun back and forth match between 2 of North America's finest, but Wolfe is going to win this one and move on to top 8.
Yeah, it really felt like the Archaludon was the trump card in the end, waiting in the back. It was so hard for Alberto. The team is has put so much emphasis on Corviknight, and especially in this matchup where the Ursaluna was ready to sweep the team if Corviknight didn't